Hello and welcome back to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Today is Thursday, May 29th. Got a good show for you today. First, we're going to go over College Football Hall of Fame. They just announced that they are lowering the threshold for winning percentage for head coaches. We're going to talk about what that means, especially for the man, the myth, the legend, Mike Leach. Going to talk about what it means for the Pirate, as well as some other head coaches. Then we're going to get into Big Ten versus SEC play-in games. Sounds kind of interesting, and it sounds like that is something the SEC head coaches have kind of discussed this week during their meetings. We're going to get into what that could look like, what that could potentially be, just kind of that kind of scenario. We're going to go over that, preview that, kind of dive into it. We're also going to talk a little bit about the EA College Football 26 video game. The trailer just got released today. Going to go over the trailer as well as some of the big features in the video game. And make sure you stick around for the end of our show. I'm going to finish off my Big Ten rankings today. So it's the end of the tunnel for the Big Ten rankings. That's at least one good sign there. But before I dive into anything, I just want to remind everybody that this show, it's all about you. We love hearing your comments, your questions, your insights, your opinions, your hot takes, whatever you got, we want to hear it. We want to make this show as interactive, as exciting as possible. Now, one easy way to do that if you're on YouTube is to use the Super Chat feature. All you have to do to use the Super Chat feature is click the $sign at the bottom of the chat box and send in your message there. This guarantees that your message gets on the air and gets read live, and it's also just a great way to support our channel, support what we're trying to build here at the GSMC Podcast Network. We couldn't do what we do without your ongoing support, and we're so grateful to have you all as a part of our community here at GSMC. Now, let's dive into the College Football Hall of Fame. They announced today that they are changing their win percentage requirement for head coaches. The minimum career winning percentage was used to be 600.600, so you had to win 60% of your football games as a head coach in order to be eligible. However, it's dropping now down to 0.595 or 59.5% of your total games played have to be wins. However, this opens the door for, namely, Mike Leach to potentially be eligible for the College Football Playoff or College Football Hall of Fame, beginning with the 2027 class. That's going to be the first year that this kind of rule is introduced. So you look at Mike Leach, especially. His career winning percentage sits at 0.598, only a couple games away from getting that 60% winning percentage before. Had a career record of 158 and 106, a guy that won 18 games against AP ranked teams while his own team was unranked, the most since the AP Top 25 poll began in 1936. And this is something that's, I think it's been a long time coming. NFF resident and CEO Steve Hatchell said in a statement that the NFF is committed to preserving the integrity and prestige of the NFF College Football Hall of Fame. This adjustment reflects thoughtful dialogue with leaders across the sport and allows us to better recognize coaches whose contributions to the game extended beyond a narrow statistical threshold. Now, that statement right there, to me, says this is all about Mike Leach. This is about the guy who is one of the most innovative, one of the most creative offensive minds ever to grace the sideline of a football field. This guy, if you look at what he's done, one of the guys that is one of the best coaches who was not previously eligible for induction. I think this kind of change of the law is honestly really for Mike Leach. There's a couple other guys that are now kind of going to be eligible that are right in that range where Leach was. But you look at what Mike Leach accomplished throughout his career. Broke into coaching in 1987 at Cal Poly after graduating from law school. Earned his first offensive coordinator appointment with Iowa Wesleyan in 1989, where he studied under Hal Mumme, who had kind of developed this pass-oriented offense built around short routes, around completions out of the backfield. So together, Hal Mumme, Mike Leach developed what is now known as the air raid offense. Something that we've seen throughout college football. Now, since they kind of created it, it's been one of the most successful offenses we've probably ever seen for certain stretches of time. The two then coached together at Valdosta State in Georgia from 1992 to 1996, then at Kentucky from 1997 to 1998, and then Mike Leach is hired at Oklahoma 1999 as their offensive coordinator. In his first year on the staff, the Sooners lead the Big 12 in total offense, parlays that success into his first head coaching job at Texas Tech in 2000. That's where we really started to get to see the air raid offense in its full form, in all of its glory, all of its beauty. We saw it at Texas Tech in Lubbock under Mike Leach and those Red Raider teams. If you look at his quarterbacks, consistently ranked near the top of pretty much every passing statistical category that there is. 2003, B.J. Simons breaks the FBS single season record with 5,833 passing yards through the air. 22 years ago that occurred. You look at Graham Harrell then, who came in right after. Graham Harrell sets NCAA records for most passes completed in a season with over 500. Most passes completed per game at 31.2 passes completed per game throughout an entire college football career. Unbelievable stats from your quarterbacks. Then you look at Mike Leach's coaching tree as well. Had former players like Graham Harrell, like Cliff Kingsbury, have since worked as his assistants and then gone on to work as coaches in college football, in the NFL. Kingsbury obviously led the Arizona Cardinals from 2019 to 2022, currently the offensive coordinator of the Washington Commanders. But these are guys where Mike Leach kind of passed on this air raid system for the next generation. You look to what he did at Texas Tech, leading the Red Raiders to a bowl game each season during his tenure there, winningest coach in Texas Tech history, still 10 consecutive winning seasons in Lubbock, 8 consecutive seasons of at least 8 wins from 2002 to 2009, and kind of fired after a controversial incident, but then hired at Washington State in 2011. In 2018, guides the Cougars to their first ever 11-win season in program history and their first top 10 finish since 2002. Mike Leach won at least 9 games in 3 of his 8 years at Washington State, a place that's historically not super easy to win at. Then you go to another place not super easy to win at in Mississippi State, where he coaches for 3 seasons before obviously passing away suddenly in December 2022 after their bowl game. But this is a guy that deserved to be in the College Football Hall of Fame. You look at, yes, he didn't have that 60% winning percentage, but he's right there, only a couple games off. And you look at the innovation that guy brought around him, bringing in and creating an entire new offense, along with Hal Mumme, but creating an entire new offense that would kind of help shape the next era of college football. Essentially, you introduce this passing offense where you're throwing the ball 55, 60 times a game, and you start winning, you start playing well. That's when we started to see kind of everybody else start passing a lot too. Everybody else not running the ball 45 times a game, but instead maybe passing 35 to 40. That's when we kind of started to see the shift in college football. A lot of it is due to Mike Leach, due to his offense, and that's a guy that should be recognized as a Hall of Famer. It's a guy that impacted the game in a way that you can't really quantify in terms of stats, but introducing a brand new offense, changing the way the game is played almost fundamentally, that's what Mike Leach did, and he deserves to get his flowers. He deserves to get the credit for kind of creating that offense, ushering in this new passing era of college football, and basically changing the game of football as we knew it. A lot of that is due to Mike Leach and due to what he did. And so the fact that they're changing this to finally pretty much acknowledge Mike Leach is a big deal. It's kind of recognizing that, hey, there's some things that are more important than stats when you're looking at an entire body of work, especially for a head coach and a guy like Mike Leach, so innovative. That's something that's more important than maybe he didn't win as many games. He needed 4 or 5 more wins to get to that threshold. Okay, is that really more important and something to kind of get tripped up over when you're looking at the entire body of work that Mike Leach produced? I don't really think it should be. And I think this is a good move from kind of the College Football Hall of Fame saying, yeah, we agree with this. There's guys like Mike Leach. Jackie Sherrill, another guy too, who's now eligible, who was just short of that threshold, but had a really great career across 26 seasons at Washington State, Pittsburgh, Texas A&M, Mississippi State. Then you look at current head coaches too. Kirk Ferentz, Rich Rodriguez are now eligible. They're kind of still, they're in that middle ground as well. So this could potentially positively impact a handful of coaches, not just Mike Leach, but potentially Jackie Sherrill, potentially Kirk Ferentz down the road, potentially Rich Rodriguez, other coaches who kind of end up in that in-between spot. I think this is a good move, and I think it makes a lot of sense. Put Mike Leach in, give the man his credit, give him his flowers. The guy changed football, and he deserves to be recognized for that. So right now, we're going to take a short break on the show. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about Big Ten versus SEC play-in games. Kind of sounds like that might be on the table. But we're going to dive into all of that when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Hello and welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Just touched a little bit about the College Football Hall of Fame and their changing of the win percentage threshold for coaches, what that means for guys like Mike Leach. going to switch gears. We're going to talk a little bit about Big Ten versus SEC and the potential of those play-in games happening. But first, before we dive into that, I just want to remind everybody that this show is all about you. We love hearing your comments, your questions, your insights, your opinions, your hot takes, whatever you got. We want to hear. We want to make this show as interactive, as exciting as possible. Now, one easy way to do that, if you're on YouTube, you can use the Super Chat feature. To use the Super Chat feature, all you have to do is click the $ at the bottom of the chat box, type in your message there, send that in. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, gets read live. It's also just a great way to support our channel and support what we're trying to build here at GSMC. We couldn't do what we do without your ongoing support, and we're so grateful to have you all here as a part of our community at GSMC. Now, if you're not on YouTube, if Super Chat is not your thing, you can also go to gsmcpodcast.net to comment or tip or donate there. Again, that website is gsmcpodcast.net. Now, let's dive into the potential of Big Ten versus SEC play-in games. I didn't even think this was a possibility, but kind of sounds like it might be. And this is something where at varying points throughout the last year or so, when we've kind of known that the SEC and Big Ten have combined to flex their muscle together, a potential scheduling agreement between the two conferences has kind of been downplayed. It's been dismissed. It's been doubted upon, even by some in the SEC as late as this Monday, this week, during the spring SEC meetings, but not anymore. Right now, SEC football coaches are saying out loud that they want SEC versus Big Ten play-in games, at least according to Brian Kelly. Now, Brian Kelly, obviously coach of the LSU Tigers, told reporters at SEC spring meetings yesterday that his peers are in favor of scheduling games against the Big Ten. His quote was, "Our first goal would be wanting to play Big Ten teams. As coaches, I can speak for the room. We want to play Big Ten teams. So we've made our voice clear. Our ADs know that we would like that. Our commissioner obviously heard us as well." So that's kind of a newsworthy development right there. And here is where it gets interesting. So that's not, yes, Brian Kelly is discussing just the possibility of annual matchups against the Big Ten. Here's where it gets interesting, though, is that the games could possibly be a play-in style format. So, in that format, it could also decide up to 8 bids in the college football playoff. So if we look at that kind of format from using the 2024 standings, we would get matchups such as Big Ten number 1 seed Oregon versus number 8 SEC seed Ole Miss Rebels. Texas, the number 7, or Texas A&M, the number 7 SEC team would play Penn State, the number 2 Big Ten team. Then we'd get intriguing matchups like Ohio State, the number 4 Big Ten team, versus the LSU Tigers, the number 5 SEC team. I think this could be really intriguing. It's a different type of playoff format, I guess. We haven't seen anything like this, and how it would kind of work would be interesting. Where would those games be played, and when? Those would be 2 big question marks. Presumably, they would probably be on campus sites during the first weekend of November, traditionally when kind of league championships or conference championships are contested. That could be one potential there. But all of that's just kind of another topic of discussion at this point. There's been no major decisions on scheduling that have come to a conclusion this week. Obviously, the big domino right now is still the House settlement. Still, what's going to happen with that, with Judge Claudia Wilkins' decision? Will that be approved finally? we still don't know. We still are waiting for the fallout from that. It sounds like from everything that it will be approved, but it's still not official. So pretty much everything else kind of just has to wait and be put off until that House settlement comes down with whatever decision that Judge Claudia Wilkin kind of decides upon. There's 3 ways too that the Big Ten SEC kind of super challenge, I don't know what I'd want to call it. There's 3 ways that could come about. The league could stay out of the scheduling process completely, both the Big Ten and the SEC. They could help facilitate kind of the scheduling process, or they can mandate it. Though Greg Sankey said a mandate would be incredibly difficult, would be kind of just a tough move. They really kind of wouldn't want to do that. A Big Ten SEC scheduling scenario, though, it's both kind of intriguing and both kind of infuriating for other fans. Without question, we'd have juicy matchups, some big-time play, and lucrative TV deals for the conferences. Obviously, that's the bottom line, is how much money can you get? It would also kind of ratchet up the stakes. It would make for some interesting matchups where we would have to kind of just see, could one league dominate to the point of getting, 6 bids? Could the SEC win 6 of those 8 matchups to kind of determine who gets in? That's certainly possible. The downside, though, the top 2 conferences guaranteeing themselves half of the college football playoff field, essentially, regardless of what happens during the season. It kind of sounds like this might already be kind of trending towards a potential outcome. And it would further kind of enhance the SEC and Big Ten's strength of schedule arguments that they keep kind of pushing out there. It's been kind of an incessant drumbeat, right, is the strength of schedule. When Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina all didn't get into the playoff last year, that was the SEC's big argument was, well, they had harder strength of schedule. They had more difficult matchups throughout the season. It would also kind of potentially deprive teams from other leagues the chance to play Big Ten SEC programs and potentially get marquee wins. You think about this upcoming season. Toledo has to go play at Kentucky. Toledo played last year at Mississippi State. That is definitely probably a matchup that goes by the wayside at some point. But Toledo last year beat Mississippi State. Toledo this year, they have a really good shot to beat Kentucky. So you're kind of taking away from, potential smaller schools, smaller programs, group of 5 programs. You're taking away opportunities for them to get a marquee win, for them to kind of score a big one. I think that could potentially be an issue here. There's a couple other things, I think. Just prearranging of kind of stacking the deck. I don't love it. I don't really love the idea of automatic bids. I can see kind of the argument for it. I just think the seasons kind of change so much from year to year that it's hard to guarantee 4 spots every single year for a particular conference when you never know the quality of the conference. One year they could have 6 teams that could be in, and then the next they could only have 1 or 2 teams that are kind of deserving of a playoff spot. I think that's kind of something that gets thrown under the rug here. And it also would kind of further marginalize the ACC, the Big 12, Notre Dame, everybody else in the FBS. It would kind of just continue that marginalization of these other conferences. If you're kind of just slotting them into a playoff disadvantage regardless of how many quality teams they might be able to produce on a given year. Say the ACC, if Clemson, Miami, Louisville, and SMU all win 10-plus games and are all deserving playoff contenders, but they just don't get enough bids because of how the automatic bids shake out, that's going to be something the league is going to have a gripe with, and probably rightfully so. It's kind of the same thing with the Big 12. The Big 12 is, it's kind of just chaos every single year, where we don't really know who's ever going to come out of the Big 12. That could be something similar, where there's 9-10 win teams in the Big 12 that maybe there's 3 or 4 of them. Maybe there's multiple that are deserving of being in a playoff, but just because of potential automatic bids, they don't get the chance, they don't get the opportunity. Though a potential Big Ten SEC challenge game could be a solution to the SEC's long-standing issue of, are they going to add a 9th conference game or not? After years of debate, it's kind of believed right now that there are enough votes to move to a 9th game. Hardly unanimous. There have been multiple athletic directors, too, that have kind of publicly spoken out against it. It's kind of interesting on how it works. But Sam Pittman said if he could choose, he would do is keep the 8 conference games and then add one matchup every year against a Big Ten opponent. One that's just slotted into the schedule where it's basically an 8+1. I kind of like that idea. And it sounds like SEC coaches are also ready and willing to kind of end up playing Big Ten teams. It sounds like they're anticipating something better than a 500 record in those matchups. Obviously, you don't know. And then another factor here is, could a potential scheduling agreement put in jeopardy rivalry matchups with the ACC? You look at Clemson, South Carolina, Georgia Tech, Louisville, Kentucky. Could those matchups end up ending these long-standing rivalries if there is a Big Ten SEC agreement? That's certainly kind of another scenario here to look at, is could these rivalries be tossed to the wayside in favor of a Big Ten SEC agreement? It's something that's certainly very possible. I hope that doesn't happen. I'm a big fan of rivalry games, but right now it's all just talking points. It's nothing more. We don't know what's going to happen. I just kind of wanted to discuss some of the potential and some of the chaos that's going on right now throughout the world of college football. So right now, we're going to take another short break on the show. When we come back, we're going to talk about one of the Big Ten programs in Iowa, and do they have an offense? We're going to find out when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network on this Thursday, May 29th. Going to continue on our show by talking about another Big Ten team. We just talked about Big Ten SEC potential play-in games. I want to talk about one particular Big Ten team in the Iowa Hawkeyes, and the question that everyone has been asking for, I feel like, as long as I've been alive, and does Iowa actually finally maybe have an offense? For the better part of at least a half decade, there have been kind of backhanded compliments that have branded the Iowa football program as both a winner and a loser, kind of. None of those phrased better than former All-American punter Tory Taylor, his t-shirts that he once sold that said, "Punting is winning." That kind of seems like that was the case for Iowa football. Pretty much, I don't know, for a long time it feels like. You look at 2023. In 2023, Iowa's defense led the nation in yards per play allowed for the second year in a row. Gave up only 14.8 points per game, despite playing 970 snaps, the fourth most amount of snaps that a defense had to play in the entire country. So their offense gave them no favors, a ton of 3-and-outs, and they still were probably the best defense in the nation in 2023. That combination of those two phases of the game, that's helped the program to 89 wins since 2015, 11th among power conference programs throughout that time span. So this is a team in Iowa that's consistently won, but consistently kind of been held back. Iowa's offense has been a roadblock for them in terms of kind of getting to the college football playoff, getting to that next level. So you look at 2023, right? They only gave up 14.8 yards per game, but their offense averaged 15.4 points and an FBS worst 243 offensive yards per game, total per game. The lowest yardage output by a Big Ten power program in 39 years. 40 years, basically, of offensive explosion. And then there's Iowa in 2023, running an offense that basically would have worked better in 1982 than it did in 2023. They won 10 games in 2023, too. But the national kind of phenomenon, I guess, fascination with the Drive for 325 campaign, which basically was Brian Ferentz, Kirk Ferentz's son, their longtime head coach. Brian's obviously his offensive coordinator for a long time, had in his contract written out that he basically had to score 325 points in the season across 12 games in order to keep his job. So every single week, you'd see on Twitter or whatever the kind of meter of how much closer did they get to the goal of 325. And it was pretty fun to watch, actually, if you go back to that time span. But you look at where Iowa's been at. With the Big Ten expanding by 4 schools, with them scrapping divisions, this is a Hawkeyes team that needed to change on offense, or else they would keep falling further back in the league hierarchy. The first big move came last year when Kirk Ferentz hired Tim Lester to replace Brian Ferentz as the offensive coordinator. We're going to discuss that in a couple minutes, but the next move came this January when the Iowa Hawkeyes land FCS All-American quarterback Mark Gronowski from South Dakota State. Together, these two, and Tim Lester and Mark Gronowski, are kind of tasked with flipping this narrative and flipping the offense's trajectory from kind of being, a punch line to maybe a punchy kind of offense. This spring, the unit really bore no resemblance to that 2023 group. Receivers were getting open. Linemen created holes for running backs to get through. And once Mark Gronowski recovers fully he had off-season shoulder surgery, once he recovers fully, and he's going to be full go from about the start of their June workouts, so that'll be good. They can turn their potential biggest flaw into a potential strength. Mark Gronowski, you look at, this is a guy that was the FCS Player of the Year in 2023, 2-time national champion, threw for over 10,000 passing yards throughout his time there, accounted for 131 touchdowns over 4 seasons. His addition could actually give them a view of how good could this team be with a halfway decent quarterback? And Mark Gronowski, he didn't come cheap either. This is somebody that they really had to try to fight over. His offers soared well past $2.5 million. Jimmy Rogers, his former head coach, moved to Washington State. Obviously, he wanted his guy Mark Gronowski to follow him, so Washington State was after him. Miami sought him out too before they landed Carson Beck. So his offers, though, were well over $2.5 million, a range that's kind of typical for top-tier quarterbacks. And Iowa had a lot to offer. They plan to share the full amount of revenue that they're going to be allowed to. Once that gets passed, they also have additional collections from and contributions from their Swarm Collective. So this is something that they really wanted a quarterback. They went out and got Mark Gronowski, and they needed him. Every quarterback basically that they had recruited since 2017 left the program with eligibility remaining. 4 other transfer quarterbacks also exited with years to spare. Only one other quarterback remained on the roster from the last year, and that was a walk-on in Jackson Stratton, who began the year as a fifth-teamer, only to end up starting 2 games last year. So they needed a backup. They bring in, besides Mark Gronowski, Hank Brown from Auburn, Jeremy Heglinski from Wake Forest. Plus, they brought in a true freshman, Jimmy Sullivan. They have hopes for a couple other kids. So they're trying to build stability in the program on that field, prevent having to make a costly addition at quarterback pretty much every year. So you have an All-American FCS former player of the year quarterback now. Then you pair that with Tim Lester, with their new offensive coordinator. Obviously, he was their OC last year. He arrived in January 2024 after a season as an analyst on Matt LaFleur's staff with the Green Bay Packers. Immediately kind of installed an offense based off that Mike Shanahan tree, extremely wordy play calls, heavy pre-snap movement, and there's still a zone running system, which that's long been a staple under Kirk Ferentz. That's part of the reason that Iowa has been so successful, is they've had success in the zone running game. But incorporating a mid-zone run, too, completely changed their ground game this year. Enabled Caleb Johnson, first-team All-American running back, to get vertical a lot quicker. Offensive linemen kind of tweaked where they were aiming their blocks at, from the playside jersey number to kind of the screws on the defender's helmet, helping them to reach their blocks on time. And the blocking principles, though, he kept them the same, and attacking style rather than one kind of designed to wall off opponents. But they also introduced a lot more pre-snap motion, disguised formations better, caused a lot of identification problems for opponents on defense, even their own defenders in practice. That wasn't the case at all before Tim Lester arrived. They were obviously, yes, very one-dimensional last year in 2024, but the one dimension did work. They were second in the Big Ten in rushing yards per game with 197 last year, program's most since 2002. Also gouged opponents for a Big Ten best of 28 runs of 20-plus yards. A pretty incredible number when you think about it. Averaging over 2 yards per game of 20-plus yards, getting a little bit of a big burst, big play ability from that running game was huge. Also putting up 38 or more points 5 times last year, including 40-plus in consecutive home games against Washington, Northwestern, and Wisconsin. Tim Lester made it a stated goal to cut the team's national ranking in half in most offensive statistical categories. And among last year's kind of dramatic improvements was a leap from 132nd out of 134 FBS teams in scoring to 72nd. So 72nd, still not great, but a lot better than 132 out of 134, I'd say. Averaging 27.7 points per game last year, though, and has avoided kind of setting statistical marks for this year. But he has some benchmarks too for his new quarterback and Mark Gronowski for this new offense. This is a staff, though, that not just added Tim Lester. Added former Wake Forest offensive coordinator Warren Ruggiero, former New York Jets offensive coach Billy Vandermeert, also hired new running backs coach Omar Young, who had coached within a Shanahan offense in the NFL. So having some of those guys to kind of speak the language, the terminology, really helps. There's also a big lineman, a couple of them, in center Logan Jones, right tackle Jennings Dunker. They also were able to pluck D2 All-American Bryce George from Ferris State to become their left tackle after kind of identifying a need there. There's optimism, too, at wide receiver for the first time in pretty much a decade. The unit returns all but one catch from its 2024 production, and they were also able to sign Chattanooga receiver Sam Phillips in the winter, who has 154 catches for 2,100 receiving yards at the FCS level. So all of that, new quarterback, solid O-line, better offensive coordinator with a more complicated, more functional scheme, all of that kind of adds to maybe Iowa's not bad on offense. It's not a given that Mark Gronowski's arrival and kind of everything else is going to turn them into a college football playoff contender. They have to host Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon this year. They have to go to Iowa State, who's going to be really tough. So this is going to be a team it's still going to have a tough schedule, but they might finally have a fighter's chance on offense, and that's something that we've all kind of been waiting to see. So, Iowa, prove us wrong, prove us right. Go have a great season on offense. Mark Gronowski, shut up everybody, shut up the outside noise, and just go ball out. We'll see if Iowa can do it, though, but the pieces are certainly finally kind of there for Iowa to have a legitimate offense in the Big Ten this year. So right now, we're going to take another short break on the show. When we come back, I want to do a little preview of EA's College Football 26, talk about some of the features, talk about the trailer that just got released earlier today, but we're going to dive into all of that when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Just talked a little bit about Iowa. Are they actually going to have an offense this year? I kind of hope so. It'd be fun to see that for once. But we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about the EA College Football 26 video game, the trailer that just got released earlier today. It's the official reveal trailer for EA's College Football 26 announced that the College Football 26 game will include thousands of real college players. It will also include multiple hundred head coaches, and it's added over 2,700 new plays on both offense and defense, which EA Sports says will make for authentic college football like never before. Now, this is a series, too, that started in 1993 with kind of the release of Bill Walsh College Football on Sega Genesis, ran continuously with yearly releases until 2013 under the name NCAA Football normally. NCAA opted not to renew its contract with EA in 2013, which led to an 11-year hiatus of the series. But last year, made a comeback, made a really, really big re-debut, I guess, in college football in 2025, with Quinn Ewers, Travis Hunter, Donovan Edwards on the cover, multiple players throughout the college football world being involved in the video game for the first time. Kind of gave it a more real aspect and gave us something that a lot of video game fans, especially fans in the sports world, had really been dying for a long time, honestly. Game's going to be released on July 10th on PS5, Xbox Series XS, and also there's going to be a 3-day early access if you are able to bundle it with Madden. I wanted to go over some of the features, though, too. I think it's kind of interesting that they're having real coaches this year. That was one of my big gripes last year, was like, why can't we have the real coaches in here? If we have the real players already, why not just add the coaches too? It didn't really make any sense. I tried to do a franchise mode, and it was some random generated coach for whatever program I had picked, and not, that specific head coach. Come on, man. I want to go play for Dan Lanning or Kirby Smart or play against James Franklin, I want to see the actual coaches, and I'm sure everybody else does too. So the fact that this year they're adding the head coaches, going toe-to-toe against some of the greats who kind of bring distinctive play styles to the field, that's going to make it more fun, make it more interactive, bring something else that, if you're coaching with, you're playing with Ole Miss, you want to run Lane Kiffin's playbook, which is kind of unique and has a couple different more trick plays and kind of intricate designs and play motions, stuff like that. You want to run that offense, right? So I think the introduction of the coaches of apparently almost 3,000 new plays, those are both going to be big pluses for the video game. Another thing, too, they changed the wear and tear feature. So last year, there was kind of a wear and tear feature for where the more you used a certain player, the more they kind of get broken down. The potential for injury was higher. There's going to be a little more realism now in the wear and tear system. It's now going to be also fully customizable to fit your play style, too. So you can manage fatigue a little more strategically. You can save your favorite playmakers for key moments during a game. With kind of dynamic substitutions that allow you to rotate players in and out on the fly and not have to use the pause screen. That's another thing I like too about this game this year, is the ability to be able to switch players in and out right now, kind of similar to how NBA does that with 2K, the 2K series. But I like that. I think it makes a lot of sense. If you have a wide receiver that you want to bring in on a specific play, you should be able to and not have to pause the game, kind of pause the flow of, your game. It's not as fun. It makes it a lot choppier of an experience. So being able to kind of do that on the fly makes it a lot smoother, makes it just easier to transition to what you're trying to do. There's also a couple of just foundational football advancements. It starts with improved coverage to kind of give you confidence in shutting down your opponents during the passing game. That was one thing I thought last year. Trying to pass against, a decent difficulty I am so sorry about that. Oh my goodness, it's allergy season here, and had to sneeze. I apologize, but we're going to move on. We're going to keep going today. The improved coverage. That was one thing I thought last year's game really wasn't great on, was being able to kind of cover better offenses, and as well on the flip side, being able to pass against some of those defenses was just kind of difficult. There's improved blocking too that's going to reward players using their left stick skills to try to juke, spin move, do whatever. There's going to be some more improved blocking to kind of help adapt to the player's skill level. There's also going to be changes to the tackling system. It's going to be a little more physics-based, and there's going to be new tackle types, different enhancements to the hit stick as well, so you can have a little greater control on both sides of the ball. You're going to be able to use different stunts, different twists as well to kind of optimize your pass rush. There's a new custom zones feature to really kind of dial in your coverage skills at the line of scrimmage. And there's also a lot of new abilities that we're going to see sooner rather than later. Another thing, too, is the stadium pulse effect. That's something that's a little interesting. They're going to keep doing that. They're going to keep using that. So that's going to be kind of changed, upgraded a little bit here. Rivalry games, college football playoff, other high-stakes matchups are going to be even more affected by stadium pulse right now. So when you're on the road, you're going to have to use your confidence, your composure to kind of help counteract the rattling environment. There's also going to be a sound upgrade. So no more drum lines, at least. Hopefully not throughout the entire game. So you're going to feel the stadium be a little more unique with new PA tracks, including Enter Sandman, which we saw in the game day trailer, 160 new school-specific chants, new mascots, different band music, and we're also going to see new marching band covers of popular songs during the title screen this year, just to kind of give it a little more interaction. I really like that, as well as fight songs throughout the country. I think that just kind of adds a much more dynamic piece. It really got boring when you were playing the game for a couple hours and you're just hearing the same drum line over and over and over again. So kind of breaking up that continuity, giving it a little bit of a different flair, I think that's a really good idea. We're also going to see the trophy room come back. You're going to be able to show off your friends, your rivals, all your different kind of trophies. You can get your Dynasty ones, your Road to Glory, your Road to the College Football Playoffs. All of those trophies, they're going to be saved in the trophy room. Kind of just adds a little more. And then Road to Glory, too. Road to Glory. You're going to be able to play in high school this year. You're going to be able to choose from 10 new archetypes, rise from a high school recruit to Heisman glory. Every decision is kind of going to shape how your career plays out. So you're going to be able to kind of build up your highlight tape to earn an offer from your dream school, make that decision in a famous hat ceremony. That's all going to be built into the game this year. We're going to get to see it, as opposed to kind of last year where it was a little more streamlined. So those are some of the big kind of key features of this game. I'm really excited for it to come out. I think the first kind of comeback edition of College Football 25 was a great start to the series, but there's always room for improvement, and it sounds like they're really kind of trying to key in on some of those issues, some of those smaller things from last year, and make this a better game overall. But I'm excited. We're going to see how it shakes out when EA College Football 26 debuts on July 10th. So right now, we're going to take our last break of the show. And when we come back, we're going to finish off those Big Ten rankings with our top 3 teams. So stick with us. We'll be right back on the GSMC College Football Podcast. Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network on this Thursday, May 29th. Going to finish off our show by talking about our top 3 Big Ten teams. Today, going to finish off those rankings. So, right now, I think the number 3 team is the defending national champion, the Ohio State Buckeyes. There's a couple reasons. So, yes, they finally kind of got the monkey off the back. Ryan Day leads Ohio State to a national championship in 2024. A lot of key members of the program left. How are they going to kind of retool, rebuild? Those are all going to be some of the questions that the Buckeyes are going to have to face this year. The biggest question mark is going to be at quarterback. After Will Howard leaves, you're getting Julian Sayin and potentially Lincoln Keenholz, both young quarterbacks that have room and potential to grow into the role, but are they going to kind of struggle through some up and down bumps in the road? I think those are some of the question marks here. It's more going to be of lack of experience rather than lack of ability, I think. Julian Sayin looks smooth, though, throughout the entire spring. A guy that was a former 5-star in his own right should kind of be able to step into the role, especially when you look at some of the pass catchers that this Ohio State team still has. You still have Jeremiah Smith. You still have Carnell Tate. You still have Brandon Innes. You still have Mylan Graham. And you bring in Max Clare at tight end from Purdue after he was really Purdue's only option in the pass game last year. You bring him in to feast across the middle of the field when you have all those guys on the outside. Running back, though, you're losing Quinshon Judkins, you're losing Travion Henderson, and who's going to replace him is a big question mark. James Peoples is going to need to step up. C.J. Donaldson's going to need to step up. Could potentially Bo Jackson. Yes, his name is Bo Jackson. Could potentially freshman Bo Jackson get some playing time as well. Those are all kind of conversations that are going to have to be had. O-line, it's going to be interesting. You have Carson Hinsman returning. You have Tegra Shabola coming back. Ethan Onayenwa should be the left tackle after transferring in from Rice. But this kind of configuration is all really kind of up in the air. On defense, on the defensive line, you lose Jack Sawyer. You lose JT Tuimalau. That unit really is going to hurt. You lose Tyleik Williams as well. So Caden Curry kind of expected to take over one of the defensive end spots. You do bring in Bo Atkinson from North Carolina after he was kind of their leading pass rusher of the past year. But obviously this unit not nearly as strong as it was last year with guys like JT, Jack Sawyer in that room. Linebacker, though, that's pretty set. You have Sonny Styles coming back, who that's a huge piece. And then you have Arvell Reese, too, who's going to be another unquestioned starter. Peyton Pierce could kind of step into that first linebacker off of the bench role, kind of what Arvell Reese occupied last year. So they're really set at linebacker. And then secondary looks pretty good, too. Caleb Downs, probably the best defensive player in America, is returning. Davison and Bickerson locking up one of the corner spots. Jermaine Matthews locking up the outside corner spot on the other side. Lorenzo Styles could start in the slot, but there's also Devin Sanchez, Aaron Scott, former Blue Chips, that could potentially play outside, and you have Jermaine Matthews bump inside to the slot. That's also a possibility. But this is a team that they're still really good. They're still really talented. I just think there's a couple question marks here that the other two teams don't really have right now. And I don't know if some of the reinforcements, some of the replacements are going to be as good as some of the guys from that 2024 Buckeyes team were. I think that's the reason I kind of have them third right now. They could certainly lose a couple matchups, especially that Texas season opener. Even though it is at home, that's going to be a tough matchup, especially since it's going to be at noon, which was announced. So Texas gets to play at noon instead of a primetime night game. That's going to be a big deal. I just think there's a couple question marks around Ohio State. That's why I have them at 3. I think Oregon's at 2. Oregon, landmark first year in the Big Ten. Undefeated, winning the Big Ten. You do kind of get beat down by Ohio State in the college football playoff, so that's a disappointment. But I think because of that disappointment, they're a little underrated heading into 2025, which is kind of wild to think about when you look at how they've played under Dan Lanning pretty much every year since he's been their head coach. You lose Dylan Gabriel, yes, but you have Dante Moore come in, former 5-star guy that was able to sit the entire year last year and kind of just learn as a quarterback. I think he's going to be really great. You have Mekhi Hughes at running back, absolute stud of a running back, transferring in from Tulane. You also have Noah Whittington there to kind of be that number 2 back after running for over 500 yards last year. Pass catchers, kind of a little bit more of a question mark. You're going to lose Tez Johnson, Terrence Ferguson, Trayshawn Holder. You do get Evan Stewart back. That's going to be your wide receiver 1, going to be over your ex-wide receiver. Jeremiah McClellan, Malik Benson, they're all still kind of in contention. And I wouldn't count out Corey Moore here too. Number 1 wide receiver in the country in the 2025 class. Guy that's an absolute stud from all reports and indications. And he also really had a great spring. Wouldn't count him out. O-line, it's going to be kind of interesting. Isaiah World's going to step in at left tackle. Emmanuel Pregnan going to step in at left guard. And then you have your center in Iapani Lololu returning. So those are 3 starters set. Right guard, right tackle going to be more of a toss-up. But still a really solid offensive line here. Then on defense, you have Barry Alexander going to step in at nose tackle. The big piece on the edge is going to be Mateo Uagalele. After a breakout 2024 season, 10.5 sacks, that's the guy that's going to step into another big-time role for the Ducks this year. Bryce Bocher's back at linebacker. After getting granted another year of eligibility, huge win for the Ducks. Played in all 14 games last year, 13 starts. Won the Burlsworth Trophy last year as nation's most outstanding player who began his career as a walk-on. That's a guy that really is the heart and soul of their defense and should kind of continue taking over that role. This is a strong Oregon Ducks team, a team that has a lot of pieces throughout. And I think Dante Moore is going to be in a better position than Julian Sant is at quarterback for Ohio State, Oregon, respectively. I think Dante Moore is much more likely to succeed kind of just because of everything that he's done after already having started at UCLA as a freshman, getting to sit last year, getting to learn. This is a guy that's in a really great spot. And I think it makes Oregon a really big contender for the Big Ten. I just think that number 1, Penn State, is in a better spot right now. Penn State, 3-year starter at quarterback coming back. The top backfield in the country, 2 guys that rushed for over 1,000 yards each in Kaytron Allen, Nick Singleton returning. Pretty much all of your starting offensive line last year returning. You're losing Abdel Carter, yes, but on the defensive line, Danny Dennis-Sutton returning. Zane Durant returning. Linebacker, Dom DeLuca returning. Tony Rojas returning. Secondary, yes, you're losing Keelan Kimber, Jalen Reed, Kevin Winston, but A.J. Harris is the lock at 1 cornerback. Zakee Wheatley should step up after kind of having a part-time role in 2024. DeJuan Lane could also start after kind of stepping into a bigger than expected role as a true freshman. This is a team that's deep and that doesn't have a super tough schedule. You get Oregon at home, you get Indiana at home, and then your big road matchup is Ohio State. Will they be able to beat Ohio State? Can they finally get that monkey off of their back? This is the year that Penn State really needs to cash in on. I think they have the talent to do it. I think that the rest of the Big Ten is kind of in a transition period, and this should be their year to capitalize, to jump on Ohio State, Oregon's perceived weaknesses, and kind of just take the Big Ten and run with it this year. It's up to Drew Aller, it's up to those pass catchers, and it's up to some of those guys on that defense stepping up after losing some key pieces. But everything's there. All the pieces are in place for Penn State to have a really great season in 2025. They just got to step up to the plate and actually do it. So with that, we are going to end our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Please remember to subscribe, like, follow the show. And if you want, you can also go to gsmcpodcast.net to tip or donate there. Or you can go to Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Twitter for even more sports content, more sports updates that you love. Thank you so much, and have a great day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna